Trucker. John. Location. Michigan. The night was ink black. The road ahead seemed to vanish into an abyss. John's rig rumbled along the desolate highway, its headlights cutting through the darkness like a lone beacon of hope. He had traversed these roads countless times before, but this time was different. A foreboding unease settled in the pit of his stomach, gnawing at his nerves. The radio crackled with the voice of a fellow trucker, attempting to dispel the haunting quiet that enveloped the night. John welcomed the distraction, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. Glancing in his rearview mirror, he caught a fleeting glimpse of something unsettling. Two crimson orbs gleamed like smoldering coals in the darkness. John's heart jolted as he rubbed his eyes, convinced it was a trick of exhaustion playing on his mind. But as his focus cleared, the eyes remained, steady and unwavering. Fixed on him, he blinked, wondering if it was a reflection from his taillights. Yet the eyes maintained their stark presence. His palms grew clammy as he stepped on the gas, urging the truck to speed away from whatever was behind him. However, the eyes didn't fade into the distance as he had hoped. They remained alongside the truck, neither accelerating nor receding. Panic surged within him, a sense of primal dread taking hold. John's mind raced, searching for rational explanations. But logic crumbled in the face of the impossible. The creature beside him was unlike anything he'd ever encountered. Its shape was indistinct, a shadowy mass that seemed to blur the lines between reality and nightmare. As the truck hurtled down the highway, the creature kept pace effortlessly, its movements ethereal and otherworldly. A cold sweat coated John's brow as he tried to ignore the feeling that those eyes were burrowing into his soul. The air in the cabin turned heavy, suffocating, as if the very atmosphere had been tainted by the creature's malevolence. He longed to look away, to focus on the road ahead, but an unseen force compelled him to maintain eye contact. The minutes stretched into an eternity, the road a monotonous ribbon of uncertainty. John's breaths grew shallow, his heart's rhythm erratic, yet the eyes persisted, unyielding and merciless. He could almost sense a hunger emanating from them, an insatiable craving for something he couldn't comprehend. As the first hints of dawn began to tinge the horizon, the creature's eyes gradually dimmed, fading like dying embers. John's shoulders slumped, relief washing over him, mingled with confusion and an overwhelming fear that would remain etched into his memory forever. The road eventually straightened out, the darkness giving way to the reassuring light of day. The encounter with the enigmatic creature became a haunting memory, an enigma that defied explanation. John would never be the same, forever haunted by those red eyes that had stared into the depths of his soul. To this day, he tells the tale to anyone willing to listen, recounting the night when he crossed paths with a force that existed beyond the realm of reason. The world may never fully understand what he faced on that desolate Michigan road, but one thing remains certain. Those eyes, that malevolent presence, would forever cast a shadow over the highways of his mind. Trucker. Mike. Location. Ohio. The night draped itself over the Ohio landscape like a suffocating shroud. The moon, a mere sliver in the sky. Mike's rig groaned to a halt in a forsaken corner of the state, a forgotten place swallowed whole by the embrace of darkness. His weariness seeped into his bones as he ascended into the cramped sleeper cabin, desperate for a fragment of rest. As Mike lay in the narrow berth, the symphony of the night began its eerie crescendo, the distant rhythmic chirping of crickets, the mournful whisper of the wind through unseen branches. Yet, beneath the guise of these familiar sounds, another note emerged, discordant and unsettling. It was a sound that burrowed into the edges of his consciousness, like the gnawing of teeth on raw nerves. At first, it manifested as a faint scrape, a gentle murmur against the metallic hull of his truck. Weariness and the exhaustion-fueled haze that fogged his thoughts led him to dismiss it, to classify it as the mutterings of an overwrought imagination. But the noise grew, intensifying with every passing moment, until it reverberated through the cabin with a bone-chilling clarity. It was the sound of scratching, a symphony of unseen claws etching their malevolent desires onto the canvas of the truck. An unnerving unease slithered its way into Mike's mind, his heartbeat racing in time with the ever-increasing tempo of the sound. There was a pattern to the scratches, a cadence that seemed to transcend the physical, as if they were the morbid verses of a dark incantation. Summoning his courage, Mike swung his legs over the edge of the berth and inched toward the window, driven by a compulsion he couldn't explain. What he beheld defied every boundary of reason. The moon's pale light cast grotesque shadows on the ground, and within those shadows lurked a shape that mocked the laws of nature. The figure was a perversion, a nightmarish tapestry of twisted limbs and gnarled claws. Each limb seemed to stretch and contort beyond the confines of reality, the claws scraping rhythmically against the truck's metal skin. The creature's movements were deliberate, purposeful, as if it were playing the truck like an instrument of dread. As he gazed upon the creature, a primal instinct ignited within Mike, the same instinct that had driven humanity to face the unknown since time immemorial. He fumbled for his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness like a fragile lifeline. The creature's eyes glinted in response, twin orbs of malevolence that held an echo of 1,000 tormented souls. A growl emerged from the depths of the creature, a sound that emanated not from its throat, but from the very fabric of despair. It was a sound that stirred a primal terror within Mike, a terror that was fed by the creature's insatiable appetite for fear itself. The scratches continued their relentless symphony, a maddening dance that seemed to mock Mike's futile attempts to escape its clutches. With a trembling hand, Mike ignited the truck's engine, the roar of its power slicing through the night like a clarion call of defiance. The creature's malevolent gaze remained steadfast, its claws still etching their nightmarish melody on the truck's surface. As the rig surged forward, it left behind the fiendish entity in a whirlwind of dust and shadows. Yet the haunting memory of those claws persisted, as indelible as the scars they left behind. In the years that followed, Mike's voice would carry the weight of that fateful night, each retelling embellished with the raw emotion of a soul that had brushed against the edges of terror. The scratches on his truck became a testament to his ordeal, a visceral reminder that some horrors dwell beyond the realms of reason. And as the wind rustled through the trees, it bore with it the echoes of that night, a haunting refrain that would forever echo in the darkest corners of his psyche. Trucker, Sarah. Location, Colorado. The Colorado night sprawled over the land, an inky tapestry adorned with a canopy of stars. Sarah pulled her rig to a halt on the side of the desolate road, the engine's growl gradually subsiding into a ghostly silence. She stepped out into the crisp air, the darkness punctuated only by the soft glow of her truck's cabin lights. A shiver of unease traced its way down her spine as an otherworldly stillness gripped the landscape. As she moved a short distance from her truck, the dense shadows seemed to enfold her in their embrace. The distant howl of a lone coyote echoed through the air, an eerie symphony that sent a chill through her veins. With the moon's pale light as her guide, Sarah ventured further into the wilderness, the sensation of isolation weighing heavily on her. Nature called, and she turned her back to the road, facing the darkness as she sought a moment of respite. But the tranquility of the night was shattered as a sinister rustling erupted nearby. Her heart leaped into her throat, pulse racing as she spun around to face the source of the disturbance. Her flashlight trembled in her hand, its beam cutting through the shadows like a fragile lifeline. There, in the obscurity, a lurking figure emerged, its form obscured by a cloak of darkness. Two eyes glinted with malevolence, their unnatural hue casting an eerie pallor over the surroundings. The creature's movements were stealthy, a predatory grace that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. Panic clawed at Sarah's chest, her breaths coming in shallow gasps as she stumbled backward. The night seemed to thicken, the air itself transforming into a palpable wall of terror that caged her in. Sarah's fingers fumbled for her truck's keys, her heart hammering as the realization set in she was being hunted. As she turned to flee, the darkness seemed to move with her, an entity that matched her every step with chilling precision. The creature's gaze held a hunger that transcended the physical, a hunger that savored the taste of her fear. Her breath hitched as her foot caught on an uneven patch of ground, sending her sprawling to the earth. As she struggled to regain her footing, the scent of damp soil mingled with the rank musk of the creature's presence. With a surge of desperation, Sarah lunged for her truck's door, her fingers trembling as they fumbled with the handle. Just as her grip tightened, a chilling whisper slithered through the air. Her name, a hissing promise of doom that froze her in place. Of doom that froze her in place. The creature's fingers, elongated and gnarled, grazed her shoulder, its touch sending a jolt of terror through her veins. In a final burst of strength, Sarah wrenched the door open, hurling herself into the safety of the truck's cabin. The door slammed shut behind her, the world outside reduced to a nightmarish tableau through the window. As her heart threatened to burst from her chest, she caught a final glimpse of the creature's form, its malevolent eyes locked onto hers. With trembling hands, Sarah started the engine, the truck's roar a symphony of salvation. As she accelerated away, the creature's presence seemed to dissipate, leaving behind only the haunting echo of its gaze. Her breaths came in ragged bursts, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel, a survivor of a confrontation with a terror that defied comprehension. In the days that followed, Sarah's retelling of that harrowing night carried an edge of raw emotion, each word weighed down by the weight of fear. She bore the memory of the creature's touch, the cold imprint of its fingers etched onto her skin. The darkness of that night would forever lurk at the edges of her thoughts, a reminder that some horrors dwell in the hidden corners of the world, waiting to pierce the veil between reality and nightmare.